Set Phasers, a highly illogical Star Trek podcast.
Hello, Mr. Burmese.
And hello, Stevie. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Oh, fresh off 30 some odd hours on a train and 2 gigs back to back, but I'm once again ensconced in the Midwest and I can do whatever I want to do. So I'm happy now.
I'm always amused that you find such trips fun.
Yes, listen, whenever people ask, sometimes when I post about them and I'm on the train, people are like, should I do this? And I go, it's not for everyone. Do you like to sit still for 12 hours? Then you can do it.
Yes, my wife Katie was like, oh, that looks like fun. And I thought, no, it doesn't.
Full disclosure, Katie and I have been discussing, trying to convince you to take one such trip.
Is that true? Why am I back?
We haven't fully started our conspiracy, but I'm trying to get it going. I think you would have a good time if it was the right trip.
That's very true. I think you might be right. Anyway, we're not here to talk about transatlantic train trips.
No, we're here to talk about transgalactic adventure. Yes, this is Set Phasers, a highly illogical Star Trek podcast, and we're talking about Season 3 of Star Trek Picard, Episode 7, entitled Dominion. But before we get into that, today's stardate is stardate 2370403.2. And we have a little housekeeping, a little business to take care of.
Do you like nerds to hang out with? Do you like to watch Star Trek with other people? Do you like to make food with nerds?
What the?
I don't know where I'm going with that.
And you're monologuing like a supervillain, and I love it.
Thank you. Well, here on Set Phasers, with our Patreon program, you need look no further. We have lots of things to entertain you with our behind-the-scenes access for our lovely podcast fans. You just need to go to patreon.com/setphasers for all your Star Trek needs.
That's right. That's where you'll find us, and that's where you'll find adventure. But without further ado, let's run it down.
It's time to run it down.
Can you run it down for me? Talk about Picard now. Run it down for me.
Wow, Star Trek Picard. I don't think I normally hear how much reverb is at the end of that. It's truly heavenly. The Picard part.
It's delightful. I really love the individual one-hands that you've created. Well, you've only created 2, but I love that one. That's my favorite.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about this episode. So this episode is called Dominion. I would say it's kind of an interesting, fast episode for there's not a lot that happens in it, but much is revealed in the not happening of this episode. So much of the stuff in other episodes of Picard and even the new Star Trek will be we got to go to this place. How do we get there? Plot a course. But none of that happens. A lot of quick stuff so we can get into the action. So things begin. I've noticed that this season of Star Trek Picard, is this true of every season? Every episode starts with a song, a significant melody.
Certainly all of the introductory episodes for each season do. I have not
right. Yeah. But
not necessarily every episode.
Yeah, I feel like every episode starts with sort of a critical song or like a big drop. Anyway, Three Blind Mice, unless it has another melody. Okay, I was wondering if
I thought it was.
that's what I'm thinking.
Makes
Anyway,
sense when you get into the episode.
indeed. See how they run. Being whistled, the Enterprise is in the Chintaka scrap, not the Enterprise, the Titan is in the Chintaka scrapyard. That's where they're hiding, and it's 7 of 9 talking to dun 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 Tuvok, gray-haired Tuvok, which I feel like we've seen. Have we seen gray-haired Tuvok before? Was there like a flash forward? Anyway, he looks exactly like an old Tuvok would look.
He does.
He does.
We saw a flash forward of him as an old man, I think, during Voyager.
Yes, and I think he looks precisely as they predicted he would look in 30 years.
Doesn't he have the? I feel like, why did Janeway see him? I feel like Janeway saw him when he had like dementia or something.
It was something like that. He was suffering some that like Vulcan disease where you lose your logic or whatever. Maybe Q was involved. It's good. I can't remember. What. Anyway, Seven's talking to Tuvok, trying to figure out where Riker is. And Tuvok says he hasn't been taken into custody on the official logs. And it's 36 hours till Frontier Day. And Seven talks about all the changelings. And they're trying to get Tuvok to prove himself. And they think that they have gotten him to prove himself. But then it is revealed that it is not Tuvok, but a changeling, because Seven mentions specifically about getting her neural references an episode of Voyager, which if you I was like, yeah, of course. I don't remember her going to, I forget what planet she says, Acleon 7. I was like, what? That's not, unless it's some new stuff. Anyway, Geordi has to disconnect the connection.
But yes. 7 of 9 figured out that he was a changeling.
Yes. She mentioned Acleon, which of course a Vulcan would never go to.
Correct.
And her neural. Sorry, go on. Say
yeah. Oh no, I was just going to say, but she did it so beautifully. I thought it was worthy of the 7 of 9 song.
Oh, play it. Yeah. 7 of 9 says, "You're not Tuvok. You're an imposter."
She's 7 of 9.
7 of
She's
9.
7 of 9.
7 of 9.
7 of 9.
Wow.
Thank you. We don't get enough opportunities to play that. So,
and the other thing is, like, if you're not part of the Patreon, you don't get to see the sweet graphic that Stevie made for when the song is played. It's pretty awesome.
Thank you.
Yes. So Geordi has to disconnect the signal because they're being tracked, and they all look around the ship. Everyone who's critical is there, and they realize they can't do this anymore. Like, they're trying to find help within the Federation, and it's just the change. The thing goes too far. Oh, also, we find out that Tuvok may still be alive, the real Tuvok, but we don't know what has become of him. Meanwhile, Worf and Rafi are off looking for Will. They're not on the ship for this episode. And during a meeting, Beverly has this idea that they could possibly make a weapon or tool that could be damaging against just the changelings, but it veers into this area of biological warfare, which is how the Starfleet was able to get the upper hand, the leverage to be able to win the original Dominion War. And so Beverly is kind of like torn as to whether or not she should do that. And then Geordi and Picard are trying to figure out, I thought I heard something like, Geordi and Picard are trying to figure out what they want to use Picard's remains for and why they so desperately want Jack. And the thought that the current thought, which I don't really think is all that there is to it, is that they can use the remains and his son's blood to make a perfect replica of Picard.
It's the thing I'm doing. Please carry on.
That's fine. Should I not say the word Picard?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
I'll explain later.
Explain it later. To make a perfect doppelganger of Picard to use during the Frontier Day thing, whatever that turns out to be. They all go to question what I am referring to as Uber Data. It's the Data who's like half lore and also has two other matrices that are Altan Sung and before, and Geordi's explaining that like Sung and before are memory only, but the personality like profiles of Data and Lore are fighting for dominance over the body. And maybe Altan had hoped that the personalities would integrate, but it's not really working, so they're sort of fighting each other. And so Picard tries to ask Uber Data why his body was stolen, and is able to get some information while being sort of distressed by Lore intermittently that there might be something about this Ironic syndrome that's being called into question, that perhaps that is not precisely what he has. And if that means that might not be precisely what Jack has. And we'll come to Jack later. And anyway, Data is asking for help trying to control his body. And so Geordi has to shut him down. And they can't delete Lore. And it's very complicated. And they don't know what to do with Data. Meanwhile, on the Shrike. Vadic is... I wrote Vadic talks to the hand again. So once again has cut her hand off in the little bowl and is talking to the weird hand, and it's saying that they have to find Picard and they have to break him and they need to find the boy. And she's like, well, I don't know if we're gonna be able to do it in time. And he's like, you got to, and then threatens to like, was the hand like making her like unstable? Was that kind of the implication of what was happening there? Because like her changeling stuff starts to shiver when he's threatening her. So I didn't know.
You know more than I do regarding changelings.
Well, these changelings are slightly different, which is explained in this episode, which is interesting. But I did notice that the way the hand / the face, as it is, it is designated in the closed captioning, it's the face, sort of talks about the changelings as if it is not one of the changelings. So I'm wondering if the face is not part of the changeling order, but something else that somehow has control over Vadic. Meanwhile, back on the Titan, Jack is still hearing voices and he's trying to hit on Sydney LaForge. But here, this is a weird thing now. So he's like still seeing stuff and hearing voices and like the weird veiny weird walls, but he's also able to hear Sydney LaForge's thoughts when he tries to hit on her. And I don't know, we don't really, that his eyes are glowing red, which no one seems to notice when it's happening, but he's like hearing her thoughts and hearing outside voices. He goes to see Picard so that he can bring this up, and at the same time they get the compromised command code from Riker, which reveals that he has been captured and the Shrike has him. Jack wants to trade himself for Will, and Picard is against that and has, he thinks, a cunning plan, to reference Blackadder. The Shrike, so he says, we're going to get the upper hand this time, and then boom, big jump cut. The Shrike warps into the junkyard. The Titan looks like it's been jacked up. They hear a subspace like relay that shows that the Titan and another Starfleet ship were locked in like battle, and that they're both floating there. So Vadic goes over with a search party. They scan for life signs, see that people are spread out all over the ship, and just as they're thinking they're running like rats, out alone comes Jack, who says, you're too late and everyone's dead. And Vadic says, that's fine, I'm here to take you to a better place. And Jack says, what place is that? And she says, it's better to show than to tell. And Jack says, you have to catch me first. And it's all been an elaborate ruse. Jack and Sydney, for some reason it's Jack and Sydney, which I didn't fully understand, except that they're a love interest or whatever we're shipping. So they're running from the boarding party and intermittently putting the bridge crews putting down like force fields to trap everybody. So they eventually get all the people trapped, including Vadic. But things don't go exactly according to plan. So Sydney and Jack are trapped between two of the boarding party face mask changelings and unable to get out. Geordi is unable to transport them out. Why? Because it turns out Uba Data / Data Lore has become more infiltrated in the ship systems than we originally thought, and he manages to trap Geordi and, oh no, I didn't write Geordi's, what's Geordi's other daughter's name in the show? Not the one who's his real daughter.
Sydney and Alandra.
Alandra, yes. Yes, they're trapped, and then Data shows himself, and he's locked himself in the room, and he's taking over the ship slowly. Meanwhile, Beverly and Picard go in and question Vadic, and they want to find out what her deal is, why they want Jack. They don't really find out about Jack, although Vadic does insinuate that maybe they don't know everything about Jack's quote unquote physiology. And also, we get the backstory for Vadic and this new splinter group of changelings. I didn't fully understand how this works, but apparently some scientist at Daystrom Station had 10 changeling prisoners of war and ran experiments on them. That's sort of like torturous experiments in order to turn them into like changeling spies for the Federation. Is that the kind of the concept that they were kind of trying to explain? And this doctor is the face that Vadic has taken. So they eventually were able to overcome this doctor, though they were tortured and chipped apart and all this stuff. And Vadic took on their face out of hatred and is able to share this new form that allows them to not only mimic what people look like, but the internal sort of work at the organs and stuff and flesh. She's able to pass that gift on, although it apparently is very painful and leads to a shorter life among changelings, who for those of us who know Deep Space Nine, know the changelings are supposed to be extremely long-lived because you can be regenerated in the Great Link. Meanwhile, Lore is taking over all the systems, and the changeling is threatening Sydney, and the force fields are about to come down, and it is implied that Jack is not, though she's there to get Jack, it's not that she wants Jack. She's getting Jack for someone else. She says Jack is, quote, not for her, and also implies not for Beverly either. So I don't know. There's a lot of mystery there. The shield regulators fail. Geordi is trying to appeal to Lore, who seems to be completely in control of the android body. But while that's happening, the shields fail. And I don't even know how to describe them. The non-face changeling people attack Jack and Sydney. Jack is able to take out his with his weird Manchurian candidate training. Sydney is not as capable of doing so, but then Jack hears her thoughts again and his eyes glow red, and then she's asking a question in her mind what she should do, and then he's telling her what to do to fight in her head, and they're moving together like, I don't know, puppet and a marionette, or like they're mirroring each other, and it's super weird, but they're able to take out the other changeling. And then Sydney is like kind of creeped out by Jack, but they have to run because Vadic, while the regulators went down, was able to get away from Picard and Beverly, and now shows up there and is chasing them down. They run away, and Geordi is finally able to appeal to Data within the positronic matrix, and Data comes back, and they're able to sort of get things back in order, but not before Vadic and her squads relink up and head for the bridge. There is some critical information that Beverly and Picard got, which was that when Vadic was being tortured, experimented on, it was part of a program called Project Proteus. And since they have the full logs from Daystrom Station, they know what Project Proteus is. They can look it up in their information, and they find out that all of these new changelings have a radioactive element called polonium-847 inside of them, which should allow them to be tracked because it has such a very, very long half-life. I think it's a 100-year half-life or something like that. But meanwhile, Vadic and the changelings take the bridge. They beat the crap out of Captain Shaw, throw him on the bridge. He's bleeding and crying. Vadic takes over the ship, which was her real goal. And she says now she's going to tell Jack who he truly is. And that is the end. It's the end of episode 7 of season 3 of Star Trek Picard. Let's chat about that.
I say, darling, let's do a quick chat about that.
Yes, let's do.
Well, it's starting
Well.
to get somewhere now, isn't it?
It truly is. This, like I said, it wasn't like a crazy action-packed episode, but so much like lore was revealed in this. Like, we know where Vadic comes from in Project Proteus and what her upset is, but there's more mysteries. Like, who is this hand face person that seems to be in control of things, and what the hell's going on with Jack and Sydney now? Like, what?
So many questions.
Because he likes her, he's able to talk to her brain?
Or they like each other, they can talk to each other. Like,
maybe that's it.
or he can just pick somebody and he can control them.
But he doesn't have that relationship with Beverly, whom I assume he likes. His mom.
Has he ever tried, though?
Interesting. Maybe he's like, his gifts are coming into fruition now that he's
Like
17. How old is he supposed to be? 20?
20, yeah, 22, whatever. But yeah, like he's Superman, and he's, his powers are gradual.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to have a real understanding of what's going on, but his eyes are glowing and he hears voices and he's able to talk to Sydney, and maybe they'll be a badass kind of fighty team together. But I really don't understand what's going on there.
I imagine choreographing that might have been quite fun.
I'm sure it was a blast. Yeah. The little fights that did happen were very interesting, and I love Picard and Beverly and Vadic coming face to face and kind of a war of wills. The unfazed Vadic as she's trapped there, and sort of monologuing about her history in this Project Proteus, which is something very new, not something ever mentioned in DS9, if you were wondering. So I don't think even in DS9, I remember that they did make a virus that affected the changelings and had to use the cure to sue for peace. By then, the changelings had teamed up with the Cardassians. It was a whole thing. But I don't remember there being like 10 prisoners of war and them being experimented on. I think that would have been...
So I'm hearing that in Deep Space Nine, Section 31 created a virus to kill the changelings, but in the episode Extreme Measures, Bashir found the cure, and Vadic points out that Starfleet didn't deliver the cure to the Great Link themselves, but one of their own had to bring it to them. And I'm, to your point, were there like 9? Oh, yeah.
She said 9 others. Yeah.
The 10 of them that were kept by Section 31, which makes sense because then Section 31 gets to do secret things.
It's a curious thing. Well, the issue is, like when we first meet the changelings in Deep Space Nine, the character Odo was being experimented on by Cardassians. They didn't know what he was, and his name, in fact, means like little thing or something like that. They just had no idea what he was called, so they called him Odo, and they didn't know that he was a changeling from the Gamma Quadrant. Voyager's lost in the Delta Quadrant, right? So yeah, the changelings are from the Gamma Quadrant through the wormhole. Anyway. There's some curious stuff here. I wonder if we're going to see René Auberjois.
Well, I mean, a flashback because he died.
Oh, yes, he died. Wow, you just made me so sad.
Sorry. I was like,
man, I wonder if we're going to see René. I would have been so happy. Ugh.
Nope. Died.
You're right.
So are we saying that there are two types of changelings that we're seeing? One is Vadic, who's a different type of changeling to the one that's in her hand?
I don't know what the fuck is going on with her hand.
So Vadic is a type of very specific.
She's a changeling that's been experimented. Changelings normally can look like something from the outside, but if you scan them, you'll see that they're made of like gold honey juice.
Right.
You can see, yeah.
So are we still assuming that there are only 9 of her type?
No, because she said she's able to give her gift. She's like patient zero to others. So I think she's created a larger group of them. That's why they've.
Okay. This is where I'm like trying to keep up with, because, if you were not a Deep Space Nine fan, it's all brand new information, and it's a slightly complicated plot.
The original changelings are not involved. The original changelings went back to the Gamma Quadrant and stayed there. They're like, we'll give up our desire for conquest. And Odo goes to join them and to like help them, be peaceful.
Which is the Great Link / the Great Lake of honey juice.
It's a planet that is literally just a bit like a couple of rocks and then a big lake of honey juice. It's hot. And then these is like a splinter group that I guess no one knew about. And we don't know how they went from the lab to having the Shrike and all that stuff, but I have a feeling that Handface has something to do with it, whoever Handface is. And Handface I don't think is a changeling, is my guess, but somehow is able to speak to them through their flesh. Ooh, crazy. And they want Jack.
I think if Handface if Handface is not a changeling, whom could it be?
This is a great question.
This is tinfoil time, people.
Okay, listen. It's probably not.
It is not Lorca.
I mean, could be, but it's probably not. It doesn't look like Lorca when it's doing its hand face. So let me just put that aside. Could be, but let's say it's not Lorca. The off chance it's not Lorca, back from having been blown up inside a tiny star in the mirror universe, I don't know who it could be, like a Cardassian or there's a couple species that were involved in the changelings. Could be someone who was involved in Daystrom. I just don't know what the agenda is. Like, we don't know why they're attacking Starfleet, why they want to bring Starfleet to the ground. We know why Vadic does, but we don't know why Handface does. Who Vadic is delivering Jack to, and all this like weird business about him sending to a better place and where he came from. That's kind of interesting.
And who could control the changelings, the newly genetically modified changelings like that?
Yeah, someone who can manipulate Thelonium 847. Also, I mean, yeah, there's so many questions there, and they really know how to ramp it up, because now I can't wait for episode 8. I just have to have these. I want to know where they're going. It has to be explained. I have to know.
Okay.
All right.
Shall we move on?
Well, one more thing is just that hopefully Data can keep control over his body from Lore. I don't know how they're going to resolve that. You know, like Geordi had to make an emotional appeal in order to get Data to be able to wrest control away from Lore to control the body. So many things up in the air. I am hoping that there'll be a valiant rescue by Rafi and Worf in the next episode. Since they're not on the... It seems very conspicuous that they're not here.
They must be going to rescue Riker and Troy.
And then they all show up wherever the ship is going, because they know how to track the Titan. Maybe.
We shall see.
All right. It's just becoming the NBA and NBC song. Hello, once again, here we are at that Phaser's Nightly News. We go immediately to the Easter egg desk with Stevie Man. Stevie, how are you today?
Well, hi there, Aki. I am well. It is great to be here on the set of on the set of Star Trek Picard, Season 3, Episode 7, Dominion. This episode opens Dominion. Oh, that wasn't bad.
That wasn't bad at all.
It wasn't bad. Yeah. This episode opens with the Titan hiding in the Chintoka scrapyard, which means we're back in the Chintoka system, which first appeared in DS9. Featured in such episodes as Tears of the Prophets, the Siege of AR-558, which sounds like an assault rifle. Anyway, the Breen and the Dominion blew away Starfleet in this system in the changing face of evil, which is why there is such a massive scrapyard here in Picard that the Titan is hiding within.
Indeed.
Tim Russ as Captain Tuvok, obviously. We love such a throwback, and just a little cameo from Tim Russ. It was quite fun, and I loved the grilling of Calto. And, obviously their relationship pulled out the fact that it was a changeling. But I hope Tuvok is all right. Maybe Tuvok, because he's being kept, I assume. We hope he hasn't. He can't have been murdered by the changelings. There would be no point in that.
No.
Yes. Anyway, so where are we? Data remembers the scimitar. Is it the scimitar or the scimitar?
Scimitar. I mean, yeah.
So when he is reawakened, he wonders why he's not on that ship. And this was the name of Shinzon's warship, Nemesis. And this is the version of Data's memories which stops at this point in 2379, so about 22 years before this point. So again, it's sort of a quite a fun little date reference point. I loved Picard said years ago Data asked me to let him go and to die in peace, and I was like, years ago? But obviously this was referencing the end of Picard's season 1.
Yes. Yeah.
Which I rewatched recently, and I was like, that wasn't that long ago, but it was.
It was.
I only watched it a few weeks ago, but no. And in Star Trek time, this was a couple of years ago. Let's see. And yes, so Picard deactivated this program. Essentially, the point of divergence between that data and this one is 2379, and the season 1 data was put into a quantum simulation. Now, this copy of data's memory comes straight from B4 and thus has not experienced the passage of time at all.
Indeed.
Indeed. Yes, I think that's just where I'll stop with Easter eggs because, I think that's where I'll stop. Anyway, Aki, it is back to you in the studio.
Yes, very much. Thank you muchly. I want to move on to quotable moments, but I also wanted to just forgot that they keep mentioning Admiral Janeway, and I keep thinking there might be a cameo from Janeway. But anyway, moving on to quotable moments.
Quotable moments.
What did you have?
I only have a few here. There were like a lot of monologues, but they weren't all super quotable. Obviously, I loved when Handface said, "Your physiology is not as special or complex as you believe," which is I just thought it was a cool, badass thing. But that also clued us into perhaps he is not a changeling.
And there are weaknesses in the changeling physiology that might allow them to be beat.
Yes, or control it.
Indeed.
There's I don't know if I'm stealing. Listen, I want to give you the pick of the litter. So, do you have one that you really love?
No, I didn't. I think there were a couple that, happened between Picard and Beverly when they were sort of deciding what to do. Mm-hmm. But there weren't any that sort of struck me as, nice little barbs. I love a nice little barb.
You love a barb. Well, we had some classic monologuing from Lore when Alondra said, was it Alondra or Sydney? I think it was Alondra said Lore always been this arch. And Lore responds, "When you're constantly subjected to these self-righteous, self-proclaimed heroes spewing their morality as if vomit was somehow virtuous, then sometimes, dear, a little bend, a little arch, a little antagonizing flair is required." I quite like that.
Indeed.
And I would have used that for next time, but it's just too long. And also, I like Lore when he says, "It's human nature, pal." I'll put that on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Human nature, pal.
Yeah.
Those are my quotes.
All right. Shall we move on to next time?
Move on to next time.
Woohoo!
Woohoo!
Who the fuck is it? There we go.
Next time.
Oh wait.
You're gonna do that? Yeah. As I conduct the Next Generation theme, I'll say thank you very much for listening to this episode. If you've enjoyed it, we have dozens upon dozens of back episodes of covering other episodes and series of Star Trek. And so please check those out wherever you get your podcasts. And if you have a little time and you find yourself on Apple Podcasts, please do feel free to rate and leave a review. It helps people find us.
Yes, and don't forget you must join us with other nerds on patreon.com/setphasers for more behind-the-scenes fun and exclusive access to your favorite friends over here at Set Phasers.
Hold on, let me just get these violins. Yes, we also have, you can find us on social media at Set Phasers Podcast on the Instagram and on the Facebook. Meme Game Strong. It's all Stevie.
Yes, indeed. Well, this has been Set Phasers, a highly illogical Star Trek podcast. I am Stevie Mans.
And I am TikTok goes the ancient clock. I didn't know how to fit that one in, but I really wanted to say it. And this has been Set Phasers, a highly illogical Star Trek podcast.
Computer, end the program. Epic.